This is BBC One. Now, a little later than planned, The Journey.
Here at the Australian National University, scholars from all over the world were brought together basically to pursue their own interests. They were offered all the books they could want to read and all the time in the world to read them. For me, the summer of 1970 seemed heaven on earth. When I was given a job at the Institute of Advanced Studies in Canberra, I thought this just has to be the absolute culmination of what anyone could ever desire, because I would be a fellow of an institute which was devoted to pushing back the frontiers of learning, which appeared to have plenty of money in order to do that, had facilities for contacting the world's great libraries, had enormous libraries of its own. And I would go there and I would simply be expected to read lots of books and think great thoughts. You would think, wouldn't you, that if you bring together a group of like-minded scholars and give them books, leisure, and a sure income, they'd be the happiest people on earth. Well, they weren't.
I thought that some of us were relatively jolly, but overall, no, it was a bit relaxed. Partly because people were working down hard at what was going to be their future.
Derek Scarr was a contemporary of mine at Canberra, and he remembers the place had more than its share of anxiety and neuroses.
It was a very enclosed world, wasn't it? We ate 3 meals a day in public, because there was no suffocation. Everybody's affairs, love affairs and everything were discussed in great detail, in a way that astonished me. Oh, you kept yours quiet, I'm sure, but most people didn't succeed in doing so.
And it wasn't just the sexual shenanigans and the professional bitchiness that caused problems here. Academics the world over tend to be people who've never left school, so they sometimes find it really quite hard to grow up. I've been in Canberra with some clever people, some very clever people. In fact, some of the cleverest people in the world. And then it suddenly dawned on me they weren't clever enough to be happy. So I left. With Fiji and Canberra behind me, I hit my 40th birthday and decided it was time to come home to England and start looking for a real job. I found one here at the BBC, which was then and still is to me a rather awesome institution, because here at Broadcasting House they can shut you in a small room and let millions of people hear what you have to say. It was in studios like this that I first cut my teeth on broadcasting in England. I'd done a certain amount of broadcasting in Fiji, but that was mainly in Fiji and to a few outlying islands. This was the BBC London. This was nation speaking unto nation. This was the real thing. To me, the exciting thing about broadcasting, it was partly an intellectual one, because you had to keep your brain working while that microphone was alive. And it was partly the actor in me, because with broadcasting, you could have a very profound effect on a lot of people without having to dress up for it. The first regular job I had was with the BBC Natural History Unit. I discovered I had a unique talent in natural history. This was a complete inability to remember anything that anybody told me. Now, this means I was always excited by things I'd heard 100 times before. And excitement is what you need in radio, and they kept me in the job. I was soon presenting a weekly program called The Living World, in which I ambled over the countryside with a variety of experts and scientists. I worked for about 12 years putting out this program, and I came across this still rather, to me, amazing fact that the scientists whom I interviewed, whose job it was, the biologists whose job it was to understand the origins and development of life on this planet, to a man or woman, believed that all the life forms we see around us at the present time on this planet evolved by a process of accident out of green slime. That Beethoven's later quartets, that Trovatore, are all explainable in biological terms. And not only did they believe this, but they had the same sort of fervor in this belief as the Christians who persecuted Galileo. There'd been a complete changeover. You couldn't get a job in Oxford or Cambridge in the 19th century unless you signed up to the fact that God made the world. Now you couldn't get a job in any scientific department unless you signed up to the fact that he didn't. It had just happened accidentally. And I found this amazing. I suppose that as I was fascinated with such questions, it was only a short step across to BBC religious television. When I arrived there, something of a renaissance was going on, and it was an exciting time to be around. Religious documentaries were being relaunched. Bill Nicholson was a senior producer and soon became a close friend.
Well, there were a whole lot of us, quite young people, quite ambitious, and we had entered a department that had traditionally been populated by ordained men, by vicars. And we wanted not to be a joke. We wanted to be taken seriously. We wanted to be watched by millions. We wanted to be like Panorama and Horizon and programs like that. So we said to ourselves, what's standing in the way of people treating religious programming seriously? And the answer was the vicars. Okay, sling out the vicars, but leave the religious subject matter, which we had to, because that was our job. You know, we couldn't start making programs about frogs or something. And so we decided the way to do it was approach this whole area of meaning in life, spiritual longings, God, the great world religions, but from a point of view that did not presume that we had the answer. So we were going to be objective, agnostic, skeptical even. Then the question was, do we have a front man or not? And there really aren't a lot of people hanging around saying, I am professionally interested in religious matters, but I'm not attached to any church. Mm-hmm. And we found you.
That's why you took me on, do you think, because of this lack of commitment?
Very much so. That was really important because we wanted you to be our common man, our intelligent common man who would go into any situation and ask the kind of questions that we felt our audience wanted to ask, pursue them intelligently, not let people off the hook, but be interested. Essentially, within Everyman, I would be put into situations where I would have pressures put upon me to have religious experience of some kind. This was either by being half-starved on a farm somewhere where we went and fasted for 7 days, or putting a nightshirt and rolling about on a grey carpet in a London warehouse, as I did with Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, and told to scream all the obscenities that I'd always wanted to say and never dared. I couldn't think of any. To being zapped by a guru who absolutely guaranteed that he would give me the Shaktipat, which is the instant enlightenment, which was in his power to give. And when I said to him, do I have to believe in it myself? He said, no, I have this power and I will transmit it to you. So then he sat me down and hit me with a peacock feather and blew up my nostrils. And although he'd done the same thing to other people who were sitting around me and they were rolling around, frothing at the mouth, and apparently something very serious had happened to them, I just felt that I'd been hit over the head by a peacock feather and had my nose blown up, and nothing happened to me. So I was put through a series of experiences which were meant to bring about some change in me. And I say in all honesty, I would still claim this today, I was totally open to that change, and nothing happened. What did you believe in those days? Interesting question. My impression was that you were very strongly not a believer, that you had rejected and almost on principle needed to reject the idea of any supernatural power, that you felt that organized religions were an escape that you were perhaps too proud to take, which chimed in very much with what I felt, which I think is why we worked very well together. Beyond that, I don't think I quite realized until much later that somebody like yourself who goes on asking these questions, goes on saying, I'm not accepting any answers, has to be more interested than might at first appear.
After 12 years of working for Everyman, I was as far from religious certainties as ever. In fact, the more distinguished the theologians I interviewed, the shiftier they were. You believe that Christ was born of a virgin?
Yes, but I would certainly not believe, and I know that's, of course, a controversial point, but this is, I think, up to the individual to decide how he thinks for himself. I would not interpret it biologically, and I know very many theologians would say, well, that's a very...
You not say that those who heard and were baptized would be saved, and those who did not would be damned eternally.
I don't read him that way, no.
But it's at the end of Mark, isn't it?
Well,
16.
that chapter 16 of Mark is perhaps an addition.
How do I know which Christ to follow? And how do I know when Christ's words are truly represented so that I can follow them?
Yes, like there is a pluralism of Christology and views on Christ in the Bible itself, in the New Testament, there can be a pluralism on views on Jesus as believed and experienced by me.
And when I pressed them, man after man after man, to say, but what must I believe in order to join your church, I just got slippery answers from all of them. I got nowhere. I came to the conclusion at the end that the supernatural dimension of religion had become so embarrassing to the culture to which I belonged, i.e. to the average Englishman, that it had been squeezed out of all the major religious denominations. As I look back today on the old Everyman films, I see myself as a sincere, sometimes passionate, colorblind man in an art gallery. But I've got a good idea of what old colleagues such as Bill Nicholson think of my change of heart. I think he probably thinks I've gone senile.
Well, I think it's completely bonkers, of course, as we all do. He's got the beard for it now.
Because our views on religion were, I think, pretty well at one for so long. The fact that I have now accepted realities which we then rejected, he would put down to some sort of nutritional deficiency in the grey matter or age.
I think what you're up to is you're fancying yourself as a patriarch. You think as you're getting older, it sort of doesn't become you to be this sharp young man going around questioning everything. It's nicer to be a wise old sage. But people have seen through most sages, but this orthodox stuff, nobody knows what the hell it is, so that you can be a terrific sage as an orthodox. Well, more power to you.
I loved the old Everyman times because every day I'd be up against the eternal questions, and there was always the possibility that somebody, somewhere, would come up with an answer. In my private life, there was a new excitement. My first marriage had come to an end some years before, and I'd met again Felicia, whom I'd admired at a distance in Fiji. We fell in love, and we married. She was to bring into my life a different perspective, a different dimension, a wisdom that I lacked. We were very close. We were together, and we lived in idyllic country surroundings. Have you ever noticed that when life seems just about perfect, it can turn and slap you right in the face?